Well, it's 2018, and we are diving into a whole new series here, Signs of Life. We're going to be in the book of James for this spring. And honestly, as I was looking through and praying through where we should go next with Junction, I was kind of secretly in my heart saying, please not James. Because James is really an uncomfortable book. In a lot of ways, which you'll see. But we're going to be exploring normal growing faith in the book of James. Hey, so in 2018, did you know, I was reading, did you know that like 93% of statistics are made up? Maybe it's 94. But I was reading, and so some of the stats that I was reading was like 32%, but it's less than 40% of people actually make New Year's resolutions. Anybody here make a New Year's resolution? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay. You might call it something else, a promise or whatever else. And the most popular ones that usually that come up there are, I want to get in shape, I want to eat better, I want to save more money. And it's really funny when you think about those things. I want to get in shape. Well, what does that really mean? I want to save money. Well, how much? How quickly? I want to be a better person. That one has been moving up the ranks, and this year it was equal with being healthy, was I want to be a better person. Like, what does that even mean? Like, how do you measure that? But these are the things that were like, I've really thought about this. I am resolving this year to be a better person. That's just kind of a weird thing. How do you benchmark that? And I was thinking about that coming into the book of James because, again, the book of James kind of does the same thing for us. We have these resolutions of I want to grow spiritually. And, well, how do you measure that? How do you even do that? And the book of James is really an incredible book because there are so many commands in there, and he's urging us like this is what normal growing faith practically looks like. And so all the way throughout, out of the 108 verses in the book of James, half of them, 54, carry a command of things that we are supposed to do. And so he's writing to encourage believers. This is what normal growing, maturing faith looks like. And so he's given us these benchmarks. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like you're a marathon runner. And when I was training to run some half marathons, actually I was trained to run a full marathon, but I got hurt after my 22-mile run, which is really like a bummer. Like to do all that work and then actually go get the T-shirt, that's really sad. But, you don't just wake up, unless you're Mason or Enoch, and say, I'm going to run a half marathon or a full marathon today. Most people can't do that. Most people, you have to train for that. And you're trying to grow endurance. But as a marathon runner goes, you begin to build your endurance, which you can't really see by these tangible mile markers of, I ran 3 miles. The next week, I ran 5 miles on my long run. And you see these progression, and you know that endurance is growing. You can't see it. You can't grab a hold of it, but you know it is because you have these tangible mile markers. And I look a lot at the book of James like this. And when we read through and we see some of these things that make us feel a little uncomfortable, those are things that are just mile markers. How are we doing in these things? But those things are simply revealing what's going on underneath us. Does that make sense? Think of it like this, because that's what the little logo thing is. So you've got the leaves up here. James is going to be talking about all this stuff down here, or up here. But this is faith. As your faith grows, it changes what happens up here. Does that make sense? And so a lot of times, how do I grow my faith? Let's go to the book of James, and we're going to read. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Well, you can do all this stuff and try to make this look pretty, but this is really what we're after. This is really what God is after, because when this changes, this will as well. We're going to look at this a little bit more. 3 things we're going to look at. Background of the book. I've got a warning for us as we go through, and then a challenge. Now, some of you are like, well, why even give us the background? Who really even cares? And maybe you're in that book, in that place, and so just tune out for the next few minutes. That's fine if you want to. But I think it's kind of interesting sometimes to just look and see, like, well, we're studying this book of James. Like, what do we know about it? So the author is James. We're not going to look at this verse here. I know you're all set, like James 1, and you were thinking, you know what? This is awesome because I can read that one. There's not any hard words in there. This is fantastic. But James chapter 1, verse 1, it starts out the very first thing is James. So he's identifying himself, I am the writer. And now the funny thing is there are a few Jameses mentioned in the Bible. And you're like, well, which one? And so there's some debate about this. But overall, most scholars will come around and they'll agree that it's the half-brother of Jesus. Jesus did have brothers there running around according to Scripture. Galatians chapter 1, verse 19. Actually, if you've got that one, it'd be awesome if we could read Galatians chapter 1, verse 19.
But I did not see any other of the apostles except James, the Lord's brother.
There you go. So I'm not just like, whoa, magically pulling things out of the air. It's good for us to know that. So again, think about this. Good old James. Imagine, anybody here have siblings? Having Jesus for your brother. I mean, who's the perfect child? I mean, your whole life, you're like, he's going to go tell on me again. I don't know. He always does the right thing. You can't live up to those standards. But he grew up, and so he knew Jesus very, very, very well. The author of this book knows that. That's really kind of an incredible thing, I think. The other thing that's pretty interesting is he didn't initially believe that his brother was the Messiah. Where we get this, John chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. We will read this so you know that I'm not just making this up.
After this, Jesus went around in Galilee. He did not want to go about in Judea because the Jewish leaders there were looking for a way to kill him. But when the Jewish festival of Tabernacles was near, Jesus' brothers said to him, "Leave Galilee and go to Judea, so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world, for even his own brothers did not believe in him."
For even his own brothers did not believe in him. Did you catch what was going on? The Jews are looking to kill Jesus, and his brothers are saying, hey, you shouldn't do things in secret. Get on down there so you can show yourself to the world. Basically, go down there and die because they weren't believing in him. It makes me think, James, very, very familiar with Jesus. Yes, he's this tall. Yes, his hair looks like this. Yes, in the morning, he always wakes up and pops this arm and then pops this arm. And yes, he really, really likes to eat Cheerios. And yes, he knew all about Jesus, and yet he didn't believe that he was the Messiah. How about you? I meet a lot of people who can tell me facts and figures about the Bible and facts and figures about who Jesus is, and there's zero life transformation. There's zero joy. Are you somebody who's just grown up in the church and you're so familiar with the story, like, well, yeah, I'm a Christian because my parents were a Christian. Yeah, I guess I believe in Jesus. Who else am I going to believe in? I don't really know, but there's no power or evidence of him controlling your life. What a shame it would be to have been raised and have all this exposure into who Jesus is and never really come to throw yourself on him and say, you are my King, you are my Lord. I don't know if that's the boat that you're in. I hope it's not. The gospel message is really pretty easy. It's pretty simple. It's called grace, and it's too good to be true, but it is true because you and I, we both had a death sentence that were on us, and we were separated from God, doomed with no hope, nothing that we could do about it until Jesus came and said, I'll pay the price. I'll take what you owe, and I will take that upon me, which is death. I will die. And then Jesus died, and he rose again from the grave, and now he intercedes for us. He's up there saying, that's mine. He's mine, she's mine. The devil, we're told, that person's worthless. You should betray him, God. And Jesus is like, no, he's covered. But have you come to accept, to believe that? It's not just showing up to Junction to learn more and more and more about who Jesus is. It's coming to this place and realizing holy Lord, you love me that much. Thank you. Thank you that you took a place that was mine and you give me new and incredible life. Thank you. I hope that none of us in this room are like James at this point in time of his life, that we're just familiar with him, and yet we hold him far away saying, no, I'm fine on my own. You definitely came to die for this guy and for that guy and for that guy and for that girl because they need it, but I'm okay. I pray that's not true of any of us in this room. But he didn't initially believe, and they're like, well, why would he read his book? He doesn't believe. Why is it even in the Bible? Well, there's good news. Resurrected Jesus, he came to visit him, which is really incredible. And so most scholars believe that he didn't come to become a Christian until after Jesus died and was raised again. Talk about kind of a freak out moment. This is my brother who has risen to new life coming to visit me. What? 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 7. Actually, you can back up. I think I gave you a couple verses, didn't I? Yeah, like 3 through 7. That'd be great.
For I delivered unto you, first of all, that which I also received, how that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he was seen of Cephas, then of the 12. After that, he was seen of about 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain unto this present, but some are fallen asleep. After that, he was seen of James, then of all the apostles. And last of all, he was seen of me also, as of one born out of due time.
Awesome. Great verses there to go back because people are like, well, did Jesus really? I mean, people are just having delusions. 500 people having delusions at different times throughout the course of their lives. I mean, that's just an incredible thing. So resurrected Jesus came and was like, boom, here I am. And James is like, bro, you're it. I believe. We don't know if that was his salvation moment, if he believed before that. We don't know. But imagine the ministry. Imagine how you would approach ministry of, yeah, I didn't believe either for the longest time. I know it's a difficult message because I grew up with them. We shared a bunk. I understand, it was really hard, but man, look what grace has done in my life. I just think it's kind of neat to think about James and all the things, like, how, did he sit there and at times go like, how could I have missed it for so long? I was so mean to my brother. I wanted him to go down and get killed early. How could I do that? Or if he just lavished himself in grace. I just like to think about that from time to time. We know that he was the leader of the church in Jerusalem. We don't need to turn to either of these. Galatians chapter 2, verse 9 is really kind of an interesting thing. Paul is appealing to the 3 pillars of the church, and James is right there. The other thing that's really interesting is in Acts chapter 15, I find this really incredible. There's this debate about, can Gentiles really believe? And so they come to Jerusalem. And Peter, we all know who Peter is. He's up and he's given his case. Of course they can believe. Here's what happened with me, with Cornelius. Here's what happened. Here's the evidence. And then he sits down, and then Paul and Barnabas, who had this ministry that was going on to the Gentiles, they get up and they're like, of course the Gentiles can believe. Of course they can. They're welcome into God's family. And people are debating, and then finally somebody stands up and says, okay, here's the decision. Here's the church's position. And you know who it was who stood up? James. He was kind of a big deal. Leader of the church. So this is the guy who's writing this book. He was martyred in 62 AD. He was thrown out of the temple. They started to stone him, and then they clubbed him to death. Died for his faith. Incredible. But who's he writing to? James chapter 1, verse 1, he lets you know right away he's writing to the 12 tribes who were dispersed abroad. There's persecution that happened, and so out they went to run away from all of the bad stuff that was happening to them. And so these Jewish believers are out and about, and that is who James is writing to. Now, the timing of this book is early. It's probably written someplace between 45 to 48 AD. It's written probably before Acts 15 ever happened. It's probably, as you look at your New Testament and you sit there and go, okay, here's Matthew all the way to Revelation. You put all those together and you think, which of these books was written first? This is probably the first book of the New Testament that was ever written. So it's kind of an exciting thing when you're thinking about like, wow, we get to study the book of James. This is really kind of cool. The guy who's writing it, stud. When he's writing it early on, awesome. But what's his purpose? And this is where people are like, James at times can just feel like he's just vomiting a whole bunch of information at you. Well, what another thing? Christians should do this, and another thing, you should do this, and don't do this, and you definitely need to do this, and you do this because of this. It just seems like, wow, what's going on? But really, when you step back and look at the overall work of what he's doing, it's almost like he's just sitting there and saying, here. You need to know, you who are living all over the place in different situations, you need to know these are what the leaves are of what normal growing faith looks like practically. He's encouraging believers to grow in their faith by showing them what normal growing faith practically looks like. And that's just really kind of cool. We talked about it before. He's focusing in a lot on the leaves. So that's kind of a quick thing of James as a whole. So when you're reading through there, and let me back this up, if we kind of grasp this thing, this normal growing faith practically looks like, if we understand that, man, a lot of things in James become really easy to resolve. There's this whole James 2 thing that people are like, he says these things in James chapter 2, and Paul says these things. Oh, they use these words. How do they work together? Well, if you read it in proper context, they're not fighting each other. They'll work together. And like, what is that discrepancy? What is that conflict? What is going on? I don't know. Well, go home and read. Go home and read it. If you already know, go home and read it again. But we'll talk about it when we get to James chapter 2. It will help you out tremendously as you read through if you think normal, growing, maturing faith looks like this practically. So that's what James is kind of about. Now, the warning. This semester, those practical markers, they're probably going to poke us some this semester. We're probably going to be irritated by some of the things that I say. Not me, what James has to say. Unless, of course, you're like some of the people that I've run into. You know them. When I was in high school, I had a job of detasseling corn in Iowa. Anybody ever detasseled corn in Iowa? Or just detasseled corn? You get up and it's wet corn and you're going through and you're popping the tops of the corn off, and the corn blades, they actually cut you as you're going through, but it's all wet and you get through, you're all just like soaked, and then the sun rises up and then you're like, no, I am humidity. I'm soaked with stuff and I'm heating up. This is just gross. And you spend your days doing that, and then on a good day, they would say, hey, we need somebody to go roguing. And you're like, oh, roguing, what's roguing? That sounds fun. Well, roguing is just taking a hoe and going and taking out the weeds. It really is not that cool. I'm like, oh, Rogue One? No. But you know these people, when they gather everybody around because the quality has dropped, and the manager calls people together and says, listen, we need to talk about the quality of things. I was walking through the tiers, and I was seeing that, man, we're not pulling all the tassels. We're leaving some behind, and that's not okay. I was walking through the rogue area, and man, you're missing a lot of weeds. It's important that you do. And you know, as you're sitting there, there's 20 people gathered around, all hanging out of their stuff, that there's one or two that are killing it. Like they're doing an awesome job, and they're the two that are hearing like, oh, I'm not doing enough. And they're not the two that actually the manager is talking to. It's the other 18. And the other 18, you know them, and hopefully this is not you. They're like, yeah, y'all need to listen up. But they're the ones who are just like, oh, it's supposed to be pulling tassels. Like, they just totally miss everything. You know those people? You ever had those meetings? Ever been in the position where you're talking to the group and you're really hoping, like, man, I really hope that Lance is listening right now. And Lance just gets done at the end. He's like, man, that was a great message, Todd. I really hope that convicted other people. And you're like, man, I really hope it would convict you. Sorry, Lance. This semester, unless we're like the 18 who said, yeah, I've got it all together, there's going to be some times that we're uncomfortable, because James is uncomfortable. He's just blunt and direct at things. Kind of the difference of looking at, I was thinking about this, and we'll go there because that's just the way that we'll go. James would say this, a big problem within the church today, dealing with masturbation. James would say, hey, mature, growing faith, that person doesn't masturbate. Don't masturbate. And that's all the more he's going to say on things. And so we'll be like, oh, Whereas a lot of Paul's writings would come around and was like, well, listen, so you guys are a new creation in Christ. God is giving you everything needed for this new and glorious life. And he has so many great riches for you. And sex is reserved for the beautiful thing between marriage. And masturbation is really having sex with yourself. And so because of the great things that God has given you, you shouldn't masturbate. Do you see kind of the difference between those two things? And now you're sitting there like, does James actually talk about masturbation in here? No, he doesn't directly, but what I'm saying is that's how James approaches things. And so there's a danger that we can come in here as well. And that danger is simply this, that once we're poked on like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Faith, growing Christians, mature Christians shouldn't masturbate. The danger is this. I, in my own strength, I will no longer masturbate ever again, and that will equal maturity, that we will just focus in on the leaves and never go deeper. Why are we even doing that? What's the void that we're trying to fill? What's the thing in my life, and maybe is there like unbelief in my life? Most of us, we won't even go that far. We just say, okay, well, I'm not supposed to do that. I'm just going to try really hard not to do that anymore. And that's foolishness because that's your effort. That's my effort. And remember, Jesus had to die because your effort and my effort, they're not good enough. See, James, when talking so much about the leaves, we have to be careful that we don't become people who are only looking at the leaves. We have to trace that back and look at the root of the problem. The root issue. Does that make sense? If not, I have a diagram. Good. Okay, so it's kind of like this. Here's your there, and like, don't do this. And you realize, oh, I do that. There's a red leaf. This is not right in my life. I shouldn't do this. James has said, don't do this. And you're like, oh man, but I do that. Oh, I feel bad. And so there you are looking like, I feel bad, I do that. I need to change. And so what you would do then is you're like, I will just tear that away and I have a little green leaf here in my pocket that I found someplace. And then what I'll do is I will tape it. It's hard to see here, but there's like a little Scotch tape. I will tape it to this thing and look, I have the leaf how it's supposed to be. Isn't it beautiful? Now, did you notice all along there's this root problem, this funky root, and never once did this person ever look down. That's the problem and the challenge, and that was one of the reasons, like, I hope we're not supposed to go through James because it's really, really easy to be this kind of a guy all the way throughout and just think if I just try harder, I'll have it all together. And the reality is most of us will go through and we'll tape a whole bunch of stuff on here and then we'll say like, look how great my plant is. It's better than yours. Yeah, there's my humble leaf right there on top. I'm the most humble of them all, everybody. But you've done it all through your own energy and your own effort because you're only worried about your own reputation. You don't really care about what Christ has given you. You only care that you look the right way or that you do all of these things so that God has to give you something. And that is a huge problem. I've known a number of believers who approach their faith this way, and they come up and they tell me eventually it just doesn't work. Where is the hope? Where is the peace? Where is the joy? Where is the life that was promised in Jesus Christ? It's no place. Look at my life. Look at all these leaves. And I'm like, yeah, check out all the tape. What do you mean? You're trying to just act one way. You're not getting down to the root of the issue. There is massive disbelief. There's massive discontentment with the wonderful blessings that God has given you. You're ticked off because you come to this group and everybody else around you seems like they're finding somebody to date and get engaged to except for you. And so you're just ticked and you're angry and you're bitter. Because what matters most to you is a relationship, but not a relationship with Christ. He's only good for something in the future, not right now. But you show up anyway like, oh, Jesus is great. He's healing everything in my life. Bull. I know this because this was me. I lived this way for a very long time, and it's exhausting and frustrating and discouraging. And I know a lot of people are in this boat. I pray you're not. But this is the danger. Once it comes through and Scripture tells us this is bad, that we say, okay, that's bad. I will stop doing bad, and I can do it in my own strength. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Of course, I'm saying that completely in context, right? And you're like, what is context? Anyway, it does matter. We have to make sure if we're poked and prodded, something comes up like, ow, that kind of stung. We need to go about things a little differently. It should look like this. Ow, oh. And then something crazy happens. We say, let's investigate. Let's drop down. Let's take some time and look at the roots. The top part falls off, whatever. Right now, I'm more concerned with what's going on underneath. And let's look at this. How do I fix this? I don't know, man. And then all of a sudden, you're like, man, God, I'm just a mess. The reality is, you're right. I don't trust you with this area of my life. I think I know better, and that I need this for me to really have life. AKA, it's an idol. But God, forgive me. And help me to stop trying to find life in whatever this area is. It takes time, though, to get down there. And through that, all of a sudden, you're like, wow, the root changes. And then you notice this leaf, it's a little smaller than what it was supposed to be, but it's growing. And the root is changed. And when you begin to see those practical things start unfolding in your life, your response is not like, ha ha, bomb.com, because nobody says that anymore. But your response is, wow, thank you. You're an amazing God. I never knew that leaf was even anywhere near me. I never knew that I could keep my mouth closed when I wanted to gossip. I never knew that when they're talking bad about somebody that I couldn't join in, that it was possible for me not to join in. I didn't have to really think not to do it. I just didn't. Thank you, God. It's one of those crazy things, a little side story too. So let me back up a couple slides. It won't be a long slide story. If this is you, when this was me, and still at times I find myself doing this, but when this was all I knew is, yeah, I might be having victory over masturbation. It was really, really difficult. I mean, I was always consumed thinking these things, and I had to work really, really hard. And it was because I was trying to overcome things in my own strength. And it was amazing as I allowed God to kind of like convict and work his thing in my life to see the root issue that was going on, and just kind of called out this way. And no longer was I focused in on a leaf, but I was looking at the root. Then victory started to happen, and it wasn't as difficult. It wasn't as hard to find the victory in that area. So both would look on the outside like their victory, but one was filled with labor and sweat and stress, and the other was really freeing and beautiful and joyful. Big difference. So the danger again is we'll be uncomfortable. We'll try to fix it in our own strength and not do the heavy lifting of taking some time and getting to know what's really going on. So the challenge is this: when something pokes us, when we're like, ow, I didn't like that, examine the root issue. That requires space and time, which most of your schedules are like beyond capacity. And so then you have to start thinking, when is this space for time, prayer, reflection? When's that supposed to happen? Magically? Well, no, we probably have to make a choice about finding that. See, for example, maybe as we get into the part where they're playing favorites towards the rich, maybe you realize, well, yeah, I do that. You know, when rich people are around, I just push everybody else's aside because I want to go and I want to hang around them because, well, why? We don't ever stop to think about that, do we? Well, because they're rich. Why? Who wouldn't want to be there? I mean, cool. They drive a cool car. They buy me nice dinners. That's all the further we get in thinking. But we don't go to the root of the issue and start saying, man, you know what? Really, why I'm favoring them is because I'm viewing people as the world views people. I'm really being double-minded here. James talks about that. He doesn't want his readers to be double-minded. Also, maybe what's going on, this doesn't mean these exact are the root issues. Maybe the root issue is like, man, I'm going to trust in my ability to smooze this person to get what I want. Or I'm going to trust that they have what I want to solve my brokenness because I don't really think God is enough. See, they own a company, and man, if I just had a job at that company, then I would be complete. Then that emptiness and that longing for whatever in my life would definitely be taken care of. But most of us, we don't think that far through. We just think, oh, well, yeah, I guess I kind of favor some rich people. So you know what? Actually, you'd probably go like this. Well, define what rich is, Todd. You know, I don't go around and ask people what their net worth is. So like, at what point is a person rich? Or I have to be a millionaire? Or how many, like, what is that, Todd? Like, let's define what is rich. And then we'll have this lovely conversation, like, when does a person become rich? And I'll be like, what is wrong with you? Because it's not just playing favorites based on somebody who is wealthy. Maybe it's coming in and you play favorites based on somebody who's physically attractive to you. And so you only spend time with people who are physically attractive to you. Or maybe you only come in and you play favorites, only gravitating and loving on the people and making time for people that you actually have the same sense of humor with. Maybe you're playing favorites in all sorts of other areas of your life, not just the wealthy. And you're like, well, no. What's the Greek word for rich, Todd? I want to know, like, how many shekels does that person need to have? And I'm like, this is crazy talk. Get your tape out and go ahead and tape your leaf on it because you're just trying to justify your own actions. Ow, Todd, that's really mean. You've been poked. Now, what are you going to do with it? We have to look deeper. You're like, what is this? God with an iPad into your soul. No. It's not me, but here's an example of looking deeper. I have noticed throughout the course of my life, and it was early 20s when I started kind of noticing this, but it's been a trend that happens in me. When there's areas where I'm either discouraged or I'm really just discontent with life, or times that I feel really lonely, what I found when I was younger in life, and yet the trend still stays with me, is that I would look to fill that void or escape that by shopping, usually for some technology piece. Oh, well, what's wrong with that? Well, it's just technology, right? Well, no, see, I'm trying to fix a root issue of loneliness or discouragement or discouraged or discontentment through buying stuff as opposed to coming to the Lord and saying, Lord, right now I am so lonely. Life is not going how I want, and I'm mad about it because I don't feel like you're really being faithful because you're not working how I want you to work in my life right now. And all of a sudden I begin to see, even here, and hopefully you're picking this up too, that I'm mad because I'm not getting my own way, as if the world is about me. It's not. But because I'm not willing to wrestle with that and admit to the fact that I am so filled with pride that then leads to insecurity that I then try to fix by buying stuff, because I can go into research mode and I can see the pros and cons of all the different things. Do I need the new iPhone? Do I not need the new iPhone? Do I need this whatever or this? I can waste time and I can avoid the real issue by surfing and researching online. And then I get to exhibit control in my own life because I decide which one I should get. Nobody tells me which one to buy. I will buy this one. I am in control. And then, the amazing thing is, as I go through that process, it kind of works for a short period of time, and then I get the item, and then, well, it's like this. It's like when I bought my Honda Del Sol right out of college, man. 2-seater little Honda sports car, hard top comes right off. It's like, woo! Negotiated for this thing. I was living in Michigan, negotiated over the phone because the internet wasn't really a thing. I mean, it was a thing, but it wasn't like you didn't. Anyway, so negotiated over the phone with a guy in Memphis. And so my parents were down in Memphis. And so I was like, yep, got it. Purchased it. My parents, they drove it up to St. Louis. I flew into St. Louis. I'm like, this is the day. I've done my research. I wanted a white Honda Del Sol, 5-speed. This is going to be awesome. And there it is. I'm like, oh, thanks, Mom and Dad, for driving up. This is so incredibly cool. And I get into the car. I'm wearing my leather jacket because it was cool. It's like a MacGyver jacket, old school MacGyver jacket. I'm like, yeah. And so I get into the car and I'm like, I'm ready to go. And I've driven between St. Louis and Michigan and St. Louis and Iowa. I've driven that a lot. And so I'm just driving down, check this out. And I get about 20 miles into my drive and I start freaking out. What have I done? I'm in debt for the first time in my life. This trip is taking just as long as what it was before. What am I going to do? I can take only one person. There's no back seat. There's no back seat. What if I want to haul like more than one person? What if I need a piano to be moved? I can't move a piano in here. And so I start having this panic attack, and I have to pull off to the side of the road like, what have I done? Well, what I had done is I was like the fool who had my eyes on the ends of the earth as opposed to on Jesus Christ for life and fulfillment. And I had tried to escape my loneliness and my brokenness and my discontentment by shopping for a vehicle and thinking that that would satisfy, and it didn't, and it never has since. Whether it's a phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a car, whether it's a house. But that's me. Do you know your little telltale signs? Like I know if I start going and perusing for a new phone right now, I know before I need to buy that phone, I need to stop and think, like, what's my motivation? Mine works just fine. I have to stop because there's other things going on. And it made me think, because I'm not alone in this. Shopaholic may not be your thing. That may not be your gig. But how about alcohol? Do you go in and just drown your sorrows to fill that void of loneliness? What about porn? Do you turn to that because you feel like nobody either loves you or because you have control? They all want me. Is that what you escape to? I don't know. But when it's just flat out sexual relationships, I'm heading out of Northgate so I can hook up with whoever because I feel isolated and alone, like nobody wants me. But boy, when I find that person who I don't even know, I'm going to have my one night stand with them. Boy, at that moment, I feel loved and accepted, and then I feel yucky afterwards. But it doesn't matter. For a moment, I could just forget that. Do you know what your telltale signs are? I mean, what about the education? What? Because those are all, we can pick on this other one. But I'm only getting my degree because then, once I have my PhD, then people will have to respect me. Because I've got a doctorate and they don't. I'm the smartest one in the room because of my degree. They have to respect and fear me. So I'm hiding behind my education. What? You can also pursue a PhD for good reasons too, but you know, there's just other things going on here. What about I'm going to transform my body, new hair, get the biceps going on, whatever it may be, I'm transforming things. Why? To get healthy? Well, I'll tell people that, but really I realize that if I have the right haircut and I have the right physique, then the opposite sex will want me. And then I'll have a chance at having this loneliness that's deep inside taken care of. Or maybe it's video games. My life is just, it's so hectic, and I feel like I'm failing at life. But when I start playing in this virtual world, I escape everything, and I am a stud. Nobody messes with me. I've got, battle axes galore, and I will crush you if you come near my castle, or what. I don't even know what the games are. But do you run and escape to video games to escape reality because there you're feared and you're respected and people admire you, where in the real world you're just kind of, yeah. Should we continue? We should. I think we should. What about a workaholic? I suffer from this one. Do we do that because, man, I got to get more money. I got to get a higher position, better title, more power. Because if I have that, then, just then, people will admire me. Because I need people to look at me and admire me, because I need to be wanted that way and feared in that way. Or I'll have enough money to be financially stable. And once I'm stable, then people will be like, oh, you're much more attractive because you have a house. What about church attendance? What about you're just performing? Man, I'm doing everything right, Todd. I'm saying no to all the things I'm supposed to say no to. I'm saying yes to all the things I'm supposed to say yes to. I'm all over the place, and God is not giving me what he promised. Wait, what? Yeah, I'm doing all this stuff because he's going to give me the job I want, or the girl I want, or the guy I want. And that's the whole reason why you're doing it. See, do we stop, take a step back, and go like, ouch. Maybe in that list, you're going ouch on one of the things. Or maybe you're like the 18 going, y'all need to listen. I don't know. But I do know this. I do know that I have yet to meet a person who is mature and solid and stable in their faith, who hasn't gone through seasons where they have stopped, have been silent, have allowed God to work to the root issue. That they stopped and said, it's not just not playing favorites to the rich people. I need to understand, why do I favor them? Oh man, there's a control thing inside of me. I think that I know better than God about how to get to the end goal that I think is the right thing. And that requires sacrifice, really. I don't know what it's going to look like. One of your questions for your small group discussion here, and I went over, I'm so sorry, and I'll wrap up with this, is, are you going to find the time? I mean, this semester, I truly believe that all of us in this room can walk away and be amazed, not be the same people at May when we wrap things up with a baptism service, that we can sit here and be like, I definitely am not who I am. I have been transformed from who I was to what God is doing in my life right now. I firmly believe that there can be radical transformation in our lives. I firmly believe that. But I also firmly believe in order for that to happen, it's going to require from you and from me a willingness to say, I'm willing to be poked and be made uncomfortable, but I'm not going to just go try to fix it myself. I'm going to stop. I'm going to prayerfully look and allow you, Lord, to search my heart and get to the root issue. And I probably won't like what I find, because I'll probably find there's something inside of me that just hates you, God, because the flesh is alive. But then once I've gotten down to that, I can be like, God, I'm a mess, and you love me anyway? Help. Yeah, that place of brokenness, he meets you. You know, that the prayer really, we should be our ambition, should be this in Psalm 139, 23 and 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there is any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. So are you in? Are you in this semester to find in that space, to not just show up and say, check, did it, but to be like, ooh, that kind of hurt. Why did that hurt? And taking some time to reflect on that and allowing God to have his way with you. Or are you going to be one of the 18 and just show up for the food, although the food doesn't get any better than it got tonight? So anyway, let's pray.